now as they're getting ready to go and assault Gloucester, the enemy had word of the coming assault. Radio Tokyo blared one afternoon in late December. The 1st American Marine Division, assorted cutthroats, degenerates, and jailbirds, has been chased out of Melbourne, is now in camp in New Guinea, and will try to invade Cape Gloucester. I'm pleased to add that our soldiers are fully prepared to repulse this insolent attempt. The jungles will run red with the blood of the Guadalcanal butchers. So that's the propaganda. Cutthroats, degenerates, and jailbirds. So now they're going to Gloucester, Cape Gloucester. On the early morning of December 26th, they stood off Cape Gloucester. Big guns on the fleet rolled for an hour and a half, beginning before dawn, and the Marines in their traditional ate their traditional D-Day breakfast of steak and eggs, while salvos shook the holes beneath them. 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines landed first, quickly followed by Puller's Old Battalion, which floundered through a morass behind the beach and pushed up the tall knoll already known to aviators and ship gunners as Target Hill. An hour after the 7th was ashore, the 1st Marines came, turned toward the airfield, and walked into a well-laid Japanese ambush. Tanks came in to clear the enemy from their hidden bunkers, and by nightfall, the 1st was well on its way to the airfield. A falling tree in the soggy forest injured 1 Marine, and otherwise there were only 20 killed and 22 wounded on D-Day. Enemy casualties were estimated at 50. On December 30th, the 1st and 5th secured the field after hand-to-hand fighting, in which they had to call on tanks for help. One sergeant remembered a moment from a mortar attack by the enemy. A kid sitting there in his foxhole, he didn't have any head. He just had a neck with dog tags on it. A gray-faced youngster nearby was muttering as he fired his rifle, "It don't do any good. I got 3 of them, but it don't do any good." Japanese snipers had infiltrated the line and killed Marines at short range, and 1 unit tried to wade the stream was broken. Its survivors driven to hide in the weeds on the edge. From midstream, a boy who failed to make it over hung over a log, his body riddled by a score of bullets. For half an hour or more, he called to his mates before he died. "I'm here. Here I am." The attack had stalled. The line had now become U-shaped, with a pocket of the enemy holding back the center. General Rupertus from division relieved the commander of the 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, and sent Puller into action once more with orders to reorganize and drive forward the unit. So they weren't making any progress. And the commander said, "You know what? I'm putting Puller back in action." Send the wolf. The trouble was the same. And here's Puller talking to his guys as he showed up. The Puller was the same old thing. The trouble was the same old thing. Staff officers don't know the meaning of terrain and how it can slow down troops and cost lives. I went up to the front about 2 in the afternoon. I called the company commanders and told them as briefly as I could what I had in mind. "I've been sent to take over. Your commander has been relieved. I don't intend to be relieved. You can bet on that. We're going to attack here in the morning." There were protests that the Jap bunkers could not be seen and that they were cutting up our line. I told them I had the medicine for that. I ordered up some of Joe Buckley's half-tracks because I knew their guns could deal with the bunkers. The resistance was fairly light, but the staff orders were so foolish that we were making sitting targets of our people. Buckley did a great job there, as he always did. They had orders in these battalions to guide both right and left, an order that can't be followed well even on a parade ground. Any beginner knows that you can guide left, or you can guide right, or even center, but you can't follow 2 leaders on either side at the same time. The line will buckle and cause gaps. We were frustrating the troops with delays to reform the line. I just said, now we will go forward and forget about all this guiding business. Just forget there's anybody on the flanks. We have enough power here to drive, and we're going to drive. Blow your way through. Think of nothing else. So, important part there, once again, you can't follow multiple leaders at the same time. And he's talking about a physical example. Like guiding in the military is when you're marching, you look to your left and you line up with the person to your left usually. These people were saying, no, line up with the person to your left and the person to your right. How the hell are you going to do that? You'd not. That's the answer. Before the gun stopped, a staff officer from division, a staff officer from division went up on the line. And here he says, I went up there in the heaviest of the action when fire was flying all around us. Puller walked around outside the wire at Hill 660 and stopped at every dugout to talk to some kid. He'd say, how's things going there, old man? Just as if he'd come from next door to borrow a cup of sugar. Those kids thought it was the greatest thing that ever happened. You'd think he'd been handing out $1,000 bills down the line and there was some place to spend them. Puller had found one demoralized boy sitting stonily in his hole, looking out with a telltale 1,000-yard stare. He muttered over and over, Colonel, we got to get the hell out of here. That's no way to talk, old man. Puller led the boy a few paces to the rear and sat with him for 10 minutes or so. Look, old man, I want to go home too. I'm not getting any younger. Hell, I'm 45 years old. You know that? I got a family at home. I know this dump is no good, but neither of us is going home until we lick these bastards. We've got to help make our folks at home safe too. I'll try and get you some hot chow up here, old man. So, again, you just got a guy that's totally gets it. Lots of heavy fighting. They get Gloucester secured. In February 1944, Puller had a physical examination in the camp at Cape Gloucester, and aside from a notation of a recent attack of malaria, was found in perfect condition. On the same day, upon hearing rumor that 1/3 of the veterans of Guadalcanal was to be rotated back to the States, Puller wrote General Holcomb, the commandant, in terms which would have been appreciated by a Caesar or Napoleon. It is respectfully requested that my present assignment to a combat unit be extended until the downfall of the Japanese Empire. Freaking get some.